seeing 50 patients, sometimes as much as 60, but we are way more productive. And when we first started this, we said, what is the production per staff member? If you divided gross into how many production, whatever you want, into how many assistants, when we first started out, it was like $150,000 per team member. We are somewhere over $600,000 per member now.
Hello there, everybody, and welcome to another episode of your Orthopreneurs podcast. Today, we have, I think, a 2 or 3-time returning champion. I'm not quite sure how many times he's already been on here, but, he's number one in our hearts. Please put your hands together and welcome the venerable Dr. Roncone.
Roncone.
Hello, Ron. Did I say that okay for you, Ron?
Perfectly.
Yes. Or as many of us know you, particularly in the RD group, Uncle Ron. You've always been so gracious for a guy who's accomplished as much as you have, for somebody who knows as much as you have. You're always so humble and kind to those around you. And so thank you for all you've done for all of us from the bottom of my heart.
My pleasure.
So I'm excited to have you here because neither you nor I really care at all what others think about what we have to say. And so it's kind of like one of these like after dark, unfiltered, we can say whatever we want kind of conversations. Because I think I have a little bit, you've done better than I have in the the world of getting gray hair in your beard. But once you get enough
blonde.
A platinum blonde.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm going to tell that to my wife from now on. I'm always good for a good eye roll. But there's some really good topics I want to talk about today that I think some are going to be things that everybody's going to want to hear. Some are things that it may ruffle some feathers along the way, and I'm totally okay with it, and I know you are as well. We know your story pretty well because you've been on before and you've told it, and I want to jump right in if it's okay with you. Just talking about any number of things that we can talk about, but I would love to use the buzzword of today, because if you go back over dentistry and orthodontics for the last, say, 30 to 40 years, right, you can find buzzwords that, rankle people up a little bit. Like, if you said airway orthodontics, right? Or if you said TMD at the wrong time, right? Or if you said, class 2 correction, if you went back far enough. I saw papers that my Malcolm Meister, who I love to death, a former chairman of my program, used to show me papers from the 50s showing class 2 correction dissections because people didn't believe that class 2 correction was actually something you could do on a regular basis, right? And so there's all these things we could talk about, but today's buzzword is efficiency. Everybody loves to talk about efficiency. So as somebody who I know for a fact is extremely efficient in many ways in your life, I'd love to jump into that a little bit. And I'd like to start perhaps, I know there's many different ways we can define efficiency. We can define efficiency with our team, right? And I don't know if you want to jump in and talk a little bit about how you're efficient with your team, because I know your production per assistant is insane. It's off the charts. You can be efficient in treatment. And I'll let you take the question however you want to take it so we can sort of follow it from there.
From about the late 1980s, when I first started doing the JSOP program, when titanium wires became popular. And for even when I was in residency, I used to use 2 wires, 2 stainless steel wires tied together. And 3 weeks later, they would come and change the ligature and tighten them up a little bit more so that I was filling the slot. When these wires came out, it gave me a whole new thought process in terms of I don't have to see patients every 5 or 6 weeks. I could let them go a long time. So starting in the late 80s, because of the titanium, we were going 10 or 12 weeks in between appointments, the first 2 or 3 appointments. Some people get confused and want to go 10 or 12 weeks even later. But all that does is you have the same number of appointments, but treatment still takes a long time. For me, it's always been about what do we need to do to reduce the number of appointments that each patient has. And from an article we wrote in 1992 in Clinical Impressions, Ormco used to have a quarterly newsletter. We haven't changed much. The average is 7.3 visits per patient, including everything. So every 2 years, we have somebody independent come in and randomly take finishes and find out where, what we've done. What has changed is we used to take about 17 months to finish cases. Now we're in the 14 and a half months for most cases, not counting class threes or surgicals or that sort of thing. We have lots of adults. So there's 10 or 12% that you can't put in any bucket. So that has always been the key. At the same time, three different concepts came out in business. One of them was the principle of imbalance. We know it better maybe as the Pareto principle, but it's not just the 80-20. The second was Six Sigma, in terms of, for every million things that you do, there are only, 6 bad things that happen. And the third one was the concept of strategic intent. And so what we did is we put all of those together and put them through each of the 10 systems that I identified. I don't know if they're 20 or 10. We put them into 10 with lots of subsystems. And we put everything through those 3 systems and came out with 17 critical factors and how long should treatment take. What is the training that would, so each of these led to another subsystem. If I were to do this, we went from about 165 patients a day and 5 chair sides.
One doctor.
Just me.
160. So people, are you listening carefully to this? He just had 165 patients per day with one doctor, and you were working 22 hours a day.
I have never worked more than 6.5 hours in a day, and I never worked when I was working full time, never more than 4 days. I've never worked a Friday, Saturday, and Sunday.
God bless you for that. I just called orthodontist. We're going to get to this later, Ron, but I called orthodontists out in Orthopreneurs 2 weeks ago, or maybe it was in the RD group. I can't remember where it was, where people were saying Friday this, Friday that. I said, Friday? I've been practicing 32 years. I've never worked a Friday my whole life.
I saw it. I chuckle when you make your comments and people say things. I chuckle and say, yeah, I know. I understand exactly what he's saying.
We'll get into this, but I want you to keep going about your efficiencies because you're on a great topic.
Well, all of that led to how do I get to the right number of patients? Well, you've got to reduce emergencies. You've got to reduce unnecessary appointments. And you've got to eliminate and reduce redos. So at the time, I traveled and visited 20 offices, saw what all these best people were doing, and I came up with 30 to 40% of what all of these incredible offices were doing fell into those 3 categories, which said that they were really inefficient. And if they got to be efficient, they could just kill the world. So each led to what else? So if I could reduce emergencies using the principle of imbalance, of all the emergencies I have, which 2 or 3, if I worked on them and eliminated those emergencies or reduce them greatly, would help my practice.
Right. And just to pause for a second,
Sure.
The reason you're saying 2 or 3 is going back to the principle of imbalance, which basically says the overwhelming majority of the problems you're facing come from a few, not many. What people now know, like you said, the Pareto principle or 80-20 rule. But if you could eliminate the 2 or 3 that were causing the most problems in your practice, you would see your stress levels drop and your emergencies go down considerably, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
So, they were loose brackets. In those days, there were even bands, but I never had a loose band. They were loose brackets. They were wire problems of one sort or the other, and they were lost or broken retainers or appliances. So, we had meetings with our staff. We divide our staff into 3 teams, and each team is responsible for one area of the practice. I don't have an office manager, never have. At any rate, we went through all of these, and what would we have to do to reduce lost brackets? And so we went through each step of the process. So what am I doing? How do we prepare teeth? If we're light curing, could it be the lights? Are we metering them properly? Is it one chair or another? Because each assistant was assigned to a chair. Was it the assistant? So we went through each one of those, and we got to the point where, I used to literally have 10 or 12 loose brackets a day when I was seeing, and we went, and I had a group here, and they said, how many loose brackets do you have? And I said, not very many. And so I said, well, we can just go and run a report, ran a report, and we had 10 loose brackets the previous year total.
The
Uh,
year. You
total
had,
in
you had
year.
10 loose.
Yeah.
Are you cementing them all with Panavia?
No. Yeah, and there are, there are things that people won't like doing or say, but I don't like that bracket, or I don't like that base, or I don't like that material. Okay, then don't do it.
Right.
It's and so we got to that with almost everything, so that we've pretty much eliminated. Of course, I'm not seeing 165 patients anymore. I'm seeing like 50 patients, sometimes as much as 60. But we are way more productive. And when we first started this, if we said, what is the production per staff member, not what do they actually produce,
Right.
but if you divided gross into how many, or production, whatever you want, into how many assistants. When we first started out, it was like $150,000 per assistant.
Right.
Not assistant, but just team member, except a lab tech. We are somewhere over 600,000 per member now, and
Yeah,
it's
you're
very
doing
possible.
clinical team member.
Yes, no, for the entire staff.
So if you're doing just simple numbers, you got 10 team members, you're doing $3 million. That would be $300,000 per staff member. Not that you have 5 clinical team members and you're doing 600,000.
Right.
You're doing literally for every team member, you're doing $600,000 in the office.
We have 6.5 team members now total.
Wow.
I used to have 23 and then 12, and we practice. It's really a 1 day a week practice based on old time, but we practice. I see patients 2 days a week and have done it for more than 20 years.
For 6.5 hours.
6.5 hours,
It's
whether
amazing.
I need to or not.
Yeah. I think you're doing okay.
Yeah.
So, you've had JSOP now for, you said, what, 40 years?
1988 was the first one.
And for those of you who may not know what JSOP is or live under a rock, I'll let you figure out the acronym. I'll give you the first 3 words: just, short of, right? Perfect, obviously. So my question is, you've had a lot of JSOP courses. You've seen a lot of doctors come through. Technology has changed. Bracket design has changed. Cements have changed. Protocols have changed. If you were to put your finger on 1 or 2 or 3 things today that you see as the most common drains on doctors' efficiency who come to the JSOP course, what should people who are listening be paying attention to?
Number 1 is scheduling. Number 2 is getting over the bias that we have over certain clinical procedures. It's like, for example, we put in, as you well know, we've been putting in 2 wires from the very start, and those 2 wires stay in.
And God bless you for that one, by the way. When we took RD, by the way, fun fact, the Orthopreneurs RD course, the last meeting we had before COVID was with you in San Diego, or as I learned from Will Ferrell, San Diego. We did that course literally like 2 weeks before the country shut down.
Exactly.
And that was where you showed, or at least I started using the twin 012s or twin 014s to just let it sit and cook for ages. And man, it's an amazing, especially when you have severely rotated teeth, like really rotated teeth, and you just can't get a wire in that easily. If you go like twin 012s in there and just let it sit, it is remarkable what will happen.
We do, specific type of 014, and we don't use 012 because in very rotated cases, 012s will take a set. Well, if you let them go, if you can't keep those in there usually for up to 6 months. So when you keep them in for up to 6 months, you not only get arch form, you get the rotations, you get the full molar rotation, you get 90% of your arch form, you get root parallelism, you get at least 5 degrees of class 2 correction, dental correction.
By the way, that's right there. There's arrows being pointed right at your back right now.
I know.
I know, but 5 millimeters of class 2 correction.
Yes.
How I have to ask, I kind of know the answer because I was there, but how do you get 5 millimeters of class 2 correction? Where does it come from?
In general, if you're filling the slot from the beginning with round wire, about 3 millimeters of upper first molar rotation. And I know that the molar, you don't see 3 millimeters of space, but there is 3 millimeters of rotation. The uprighting and the arch form especially in the lower first premolar, will give you 2 more millimeters of class 2 dental. And then the last 2 millimeters, I don't believe that you can get more. And I know this is controversial, that you can get much more than 2 millimeters of class 2 correction with elastics. So we get 7 millimeters of class 2 dental correction with those things. If you've not seen it, then you don't believe it. And years ago, when I used to say basically the same thing, people will say, I don't believe you. And I see the head shaking, and that's a bunch of bull. And I saw that. We had over 200 offices come to visit us and look at what we were doing. I don't allow, even my best friends, I don't allow to come in anymore, because I said, if I see the doubting, and it's okay, don't do it. And so it has to do with arch form. It has to do with you don't have to align roots. It's incredible what you can accomplish, but people get antsy. They want to go in after when you get alignment, and they want to start putting in rectangular wires. You are now getting in torques and detorques that you don't want. So it needs to be in a true orthodontic malocclusion, whether it's class 1 or class 2. You do need to get 5.5 to 7 months of 0014s, and we never take them out. The neat thing is, I don't want to change wire after we're in a big rectangular wire. So what do? Well, at the end of 5.5 months after the second appointment, because you're filling the slot in the horizontal and in the vertical, you've got alignment, but then you can see if the brackets are on right. So you can change brackets, just loosen the wires. So if the marginal ridges are off, the incisal edges are off, you can change that 1 or 2 or 3 brackets while you're still in round wire, send them away for another 6 weeks, and then go to your, in most cases, about 90% of the cases, the last wire is a rectangular wire. It's a 1925 with P-loops in the upper that can be adjusted to get in torque and overjet and overbite and etc. So it's, I show the cases all the time for people who stay and take the long course. When you're doing a 1-day course or a 2-hour course, you can show people, but they never get to the reason why. You can't explain the reason why you do it. You just throw stuff out there. So, yeah. And anyway, then you just get, you get to training. How do you train people to do this stuff? Like putting in the 0014s, I know people say, my staff really doesn't like it. It's too hard. Well, okay, where would you like to work next? But, we can put in 0014s, and we can do it. My staff can do it in much under 1.5 minutes.
Sorry, I'm just laughing out loud because we're two of a kind, you and me. You just got the guts to do the things that I think. But, the fact of the matter, that you say, I'm sorry, it's too tough. Where would you like to work next? I hear that all the time because, I used to teach a lot of clinical photography. And back in the day, and I still tell people, the DSLR is still the best camera for the best pictures. If you want to be an exceptional clinical, clinician, then why wouldn't you want to be an exceptional clinical photographer? Like, it's the easiest part of what we do is getting great images. It's just you're not taught how to do it properly by anybody in school. And so they would say, yeah, but the camera's so heavy and my team doesn't want to hold a heavy camera. And I just say to them, I apologize, but is your team's name on the outside of your building?
Yeah.
Is their name on your loan?
They don't have that. They don't have, and it sounds like I'm nasty to people. We have had people, the person who's working for me now has been here for more than 30 years. I rarely fire anybody. But they know from start what the rules are. And it's like, if you break a rule, you get one try to break a rule. And if you're serious, all you have to do is just let a person know they don't work for you anymore because they broke a rule that should not be broken. I'm not talking about being slow or anything. I'm just talking about, something that is really not good to do.
Yeah. You and I share that in common. Again, you take it to the next level, and I respect you for that because of the classic story that you and I have already talked about on the podcast, which I said to my team the exact same thing a while back, which was, lunches 1 to 2. They were coming back from lunch at 1:59, 2 o'clock. brushing their teeth, getting ready, looking at their afternoon, and patients will be brought back at 2:04, 2:05. And I just politely, with love in my heart, looked them all in the eye and said, I love each and every one of you. I hope we can keep working together for ages. Anybody who ever comes through that back door after 2:00, don't come back. Don't even come through the door. Go to your car and don't come in. And you know what? Nobody's ever come back late
Yeah.
again.
I don't do late.
No, I know you don't,
I just don't do late.
because the story goes, and I'm going to give away my source now, Ron. It's Lou Shimura. I think Lou, I'm sorry for throwing you under the bus, but he was visiting your office and he swore to me he saw this happen. It was 2:00 or 1:00, whatever time was lunch. And you came back and said, it's 1:00. And I may get this wrong. It's 1:00. If the patients aren't all in the chairs by 1:01, you can all go home. You're fired, or something along those lines. Correct?
Yeah, they need to be in there. It's the one thing I cannot tolerate lateness. I've never been late a day in my life. Physicians are almost always late. Dentists are almost always late. They really don't need to be. So, if you schedule appropriately, and I realize my scheduling has come under some fire by other great people who have their own scheduling concept, I would never change my schedule. I'd go back to paper if a computer couldn't schedule the way I want to schedule. It's the first thing that we talk about in terms of scheduling.
Do you mind taking just a few moments and giving a 30,000-foot view of how you like to schedule? Are you able to encapsulate that, or is it too complex?
We do like take Jay Barnett's.
I know the answer, by the way, because it's brilliant.
The concept of like things at like times and take it to an extreme and meld it with doctor time, and that every chair does not have to be occupied every minute of the day. So we do all of our new patient exams first thing in the morning, first thing in the afternoon. So depending on the time of year, 6 new patients in the morning. I spend 20 minutes with each patient. 3 new patients in the afternoon. If it's a time of the year when there's not, it's 3 new patients in the morning, 3 in the afternoon. If it's busy, but it's all from 8 until 10. And I just go from one room to the next, do my thing. Cone beam is taken, go in, do my exam, 6 or 7 minutes to go through about 72 different things. Like things are like times, so bondings all go together. Again, depending on how many assistants you have, 3 or 4 or 5 chairs from, let's say, from 10 in the morning until 11:30. From 11:30 until 12:30, they are arch changes. So arch changes of one type or another, or adjustment arches or that sort of thing. So we've taken it to an extreme, and I know other people who are just wonderful and teach it say, that can't work. You just haven't ever tried it the way it needs to be.
Right.
So if I go and see that a chair is occupied every minute of the day, I already know that person doesn't know what they're doing.
Hey everybody, tickets for Summit 2025 are on sale now. Take a listen to what some of the attendees from Summit 2024 had to say.
This is one of the most unique, most impactful meetings that you can go to as an orthodontist.
It has everything compared to other meetings. Entertainment, the content in the meeting, the speakers, the food.
I learn a lot. It helps the practice, so it really kind of checks all the boxes.
You hope to get something out of it that is going to pay dividends for years to come.
Definitely return on your investment.
We take back a lot to our office.
You get information that you probably don't get easily at any other meeting.
We know, again, from the past that you've thrown a perfect game, or you've bowled 300 with each arm, right? You've thrown a perfect game. So you can appreciate...
That's right-handed. I've done no hitters with each arm, but bowling was just righty. Yeah.
Right-handed. Only 300 is right-handed. Yeah. On Tuesdays, when a full moon. The thing about baseball, which is interesting, and we can apply this to ortho and anything, is that we know that the best coaches will put a right-handed hitter, then a left-handed hitter, then a right-handed hitter, then a left-handed hitter, because the setup for the pitcher is remarkably different depending if they're going as a righty or a lefty. And when a lineup has righty-lefty, righty-lefty, righty, it's giving fits to the pitcher. But we do the same thing with, and I'm guilty of it as well. We do the same thing with our procedures. We have a bonding and a new patient, and a debond and an appliance seed, and a reposition and our brain has to go through a shift for each and every one that we're doing. And it's no different than the pitchers going left, right, left, right. And so putting things together makes a lot of sense. you're going to have those naysayers out there right now. You know what the first question is, right? With patients. But what if they can't come in at that time of day?
No, they do. You know,
Exactly.
I've said it when I first starting out, there was some of the biggest practices in the country were in Texas. And some of the best known practices, and they would practice from 7 to 3. So what do you do after school? No, nothing.
Nothing.
If I have a child who wants to come in after 3, or the mother wants to come after 3, well, are they in sports? Yes. When are they in sports? Well, from 3 until 5. Okay, so you're saying I have to stay here until after 5. So, and people say, you know, we put new patients all through the day because I can't get people to come in the morning. Of course you do. If you get people to come in at 8 and one at 9 and one at 10, you get them to come in every hour you want. But if I'm just thinking, you know, in one area, I'm thinking about diagnosis and treatment planning. I'm going through the cone beam because we take a cone beam. I know another thing on everybody. If you're 7 years old or older, you get a cone beam before I see you. And that's all being done and put together with all of the things I want to see while I'm doing the clinical exam. And then we put the cone beam up and tell them and show them. And it is amazing what you see, the asymmetries that you see. And if I were to tell you one pet peeve, and I will tell you this, somebody takes a lateral ceph and then says, show me the lateral ceph before and show me the lateral ceph after, just to see if you fall within the TWE triangle or whatever you're following. And then I say, well, what about the front of the face? You see the lower border of the mandible, and it's one is lower than the other. And so I was taught you just go and take the median, right? So that makes it all okay. Aren't you even interested why there's an asymmetry? So if you're just looking at the side of the face, I'm sorry, you're not a good diagnostician.
Yeah.
Whether you trace or not. So you've got to be looking at the front of the face, and what you see, maxillas are asymmetric. You see maxillas that are way too narrow. In my practice since 1979, after I took a Ricketts course, almost 80% of everybody who walks in has got a maxilla that is transversely insufficient when compared to the mandible. And
I don't disagree.
And so it's like, that's one of the reasons if I had the world to do, I would just see 7, 8, 9-year-olds and do phase 1 expansion. It's not to create a big airway. It's not to fix a class 2. It's to make the maxilla wide enough so that you're not going through bone when you're trying to get balancing interferences away. If we get into it, I'll tell you all of the redos I've had to do, including mine that I did from 1979 to 86. I treated almost 670 of my own patients all over again for nothing because I screwed them up in one way or another. And so we have now treated more than 4,200 patients that have been treated at least once before by other orthodontists, really good orthodontists. And I'm sure there are orthodontists out there who are treating my relapses that are screwed up, that have condyles that are bad, and et cetera. So I apologize to those people who are treating my redos that I'm not seeing, and but you know it's all even because I've done about 4,200 of those from 1988 to 2023.
You covered so much ground in that one sentence. I mean, there was so much wisdom in what you just went through, from balancing interferences and condyles and verbal skills. And I'm going to make a statement, and I'd love for you to tell me if you agree or disagree. The concept of exceptional verbal skills to motivate patients into a position to do what's in their best interest and your best interest is a lost art that's gone today.
Yeah, absolutely.
Would you agree?
I used to say, people say, my treatment we took a treatment coordinator course and they said to do this. And are you doing that? Well, yes. Well, does your treatment coordinator really believe that your fees are worthwhile? If they don't, they can't fake it. And I don't care what they're saying. They don't believe it. And it is verbal skills and how to convince a patient without being slick. I mean, just telling them the truth in a way that they understand will get them to convert almost always. And if you can show them with a cone beam in 5 different ways what's wrong with them, it's like we routinely convert 94% of everybody who walks in. We used to be in the high 80s. Ever since we started showing cone beams at the very first appointment, it's gone from 88% to about 94%.
I think that, and again, I'm not meaning to be mean or nasty when I say this, but I think the Gen Z and the millennial generations weren't raised with the knee to knee, eye to eye, understand human nature as much. Because if I tell people that as recent as 15 years ago, when I was a restorative dentist, people had to pay a non-refundable deposit to schedule time in my schedule routinely, everybody. And I had a thriving practice. I had a top 2% probably restorative practice. People had to pay. You're going to get those fillings done there. It's $500 for the fillings. We need a $50 deposit, 10% or 20%, whatever it was, to schedule the appointment with me. Why? Because they were more likely to show up when they did that. It was so easy to do the thing. I only did my difficult crown prep cases in the mornings, right? I wouldn't do a 6 or 8 or 10 unit prep after lunch. There was no way. And it was stupid. And so how did I get patients to do it? Verbal skills. And a lot of this I learned from life, and a lot of it I learned from Michael Schuster from, at the Center for Professional Development, which
An old Marquette man.
Yeah, a Marquette man indeed, a very proud Marquette man. And Ionian, Iowan, right? I think he was from Iowa, if I'm not mistaken. And at some point in the future, I hope to develop something like the Schuster Center for ortho at this point, because it changed my mind. We're going to talk about that in just a minute, because we had a good conversation about that. But all my team knew was to say to a patient, and here's an example. Dr. Krieger really likes to do his crown preparations in the morning when he's fresh, so that he can give you the best outcome possible. And so what can we get you at 9 o'clock? Who's going to argue with that? No, I don't. I want him when he's not fresh.
I want him when he's ill. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm going to come in the afternoon. No, you're going to tell a patient that there are times that you're not fresh? Yeah, I am. Because the afternoon is when I'm going to do my new patient exams. I can sit back. I can enjoy them. I can spend time with a patient. We can schmooze, have a good time. But Dr. Krieger only does his new patient exams in the afternoon. Because, and that's where Michael Schuster made the big difference, was explain to them why before they ask. Because once you've explained it why, they don't have a question anymore.
Anticipate what the questions are, and how do you do that? Because when I leave the room, the treatment coordinator said, they always ask this. Okay, well, then I'm going to put it in my presentation. Did you ask the front office desk, what is the number one complaint you have? Well, they want to come in after 3, or they can't come in on a Thursday. Okay, so what are the answers to that? So before they ever ask the question, let's give them the answer so that they don't need to ask the question.
There's no question at that point. Hey, Dr. Krieger has no appointments after 3 o'clock because blah, 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 blah. Exactly. So what time can I get you in on Tuesday? It's easy. But I do think the last 10, 15 years in dentistry, in ortho at least, people are scared because there's, quote unquote, so much competition that they're just going to go to somebody else. And I'm here to tell you, folks, if someone picked up the phone, metaphorically speaking, because it could have been an online appointment, whatever you want. But if someone picks up a phone to contact you and engages and has a conversation, the risk of them going elsewhere once they're in that conversation because they don't like your policy is really slim. If you advertised on your website, no afternoon appointments available, okay, they have no connection to you. But once they've connected with you,
exactly,
right? You agree with that?
Exactly.
Yeah, once they've connected with you, and think of your own experiences in a restaurant, at a doctor's office, at the hair salon, wherever you may go, where something wasn't the way you wanted it, but you went along with it because there was a relationship you'd already started building. But if you'd called them to make an appointment, or not even called, if you'd seen it online, you never would have made the appointment. So don't be afraid, people. Lean into the verbal skills and you and I agree, Ron, that develop your dream practice and your dream life around what you want, and patients will follow. Agreed?
Yeah, and that's sort of the concept of strategic intent. You have an idea that is so far out there. You don't have the staff, you don't have the money, you don't have the facility, but you will get there. You don't know how yet, but that's what strategic intent is. And you combine it with the other two things, and so it is. You can do it. And I just say, even with people who are well, I always finish on time. Okay, at the end of the day, how do you feel? Like you've been beaten because you were rushing and going in all these places at the same time? Or, do you just look and say, oh, was that the last patient? Thanks, gang. Had a great day. See you tomorrow.
Yeah, let's all go home together. Well, let's not go home together, but let's all leave the office together. We're not going home together. We're leaving the office together. But for a lot of people, it's as if they're driving a dragster at 300 miles an hour, and then it comes into a screeching halt at 5 o'clock or 5:30, whenever they're done. And it's like they didn't have a chance to breathe. They didn't have a chance to think. Most importantly, they didn't have a chance to work on their practice because they were so busy working in their practice. And so if there's one piece of information everybody listening should take out of this, I've been an advocate of it for decades. You've been an advocate for decades. Develop a strategic plan that works for you. Strategic intent. You don't need to know how to get there yet, but develop what it is you want. Because as the old saying, I think the Cheshire Cat says it, if you don't know where you're going, any path will take you there. Right? So just let's just develop what our plan is, and that's a good starting point. And I could talk to you for days about things like balancing interferences and joints. And by the way, you did say something interesting about the 2 millimeter rule of the non-dental changes. And Malcolm Meister, the one I told you about earlier, just a brilliant man that unfortunately the vast majority of orthos never heard of. But a brilliant man, ultimately later became an attorney when he was disabled, but former chairman of my program. He had his 5 keys to class 2 correction, which included everything you talked about, right? Distalizing upper molars, mesializing lower molars, derotating the upper first molars, postural changes, and enhancing differential growth, right? Like those are his 5 things that he talked about. And we could add today occlusal plane changes with things like the motion appliance or something like that. But the interesting thing was he showed me the paper I told you from the 50s of the dissection of some huge number of corpses with class 2 and class 3 occlusions. And they were looking specifically at where was the condyle relative to the cartilage, where was the cartilage relative to the condyle in these cases. And it was crystal clear that just by centering the condyle on the cartilage alone, just that alone, in most cases would give you 2 millimeters of change right there. Just because elastics are not just about pulling teeth, they're about repositioning a condyle on cartilage. And if you've got a class 2 with an anterior displaced disc or just slightly anterior, the moment you get it back on, hey folks, you just picked up a couple of millimeters of correction. But your elastics moved all the teeth, right? And I've had cases, and the 2 things I've had conjecture about my whole career, and I'd love your feedback on them. And this is as deep as we'll dive into occlusion, because I think people's heads are about to explode who are listening. We don't want to get into balancing interferences and working interferences and why cuspid rise really matters. And but the 2 things I've had conjecture on are, if you look at a CBCT or a pan, the angle of disclusion of the incisors seems to match almost exactly the angle of the condyle, of the articular eminence, right? Because there really is no articular eminence until a child is 6 or 7 years of age, right? Until they get their permanent teeth, there really isn't a big articular eminence from what I've seen, what I've learned, and that angle of disclusion of the anterior teeth, the permanent anterior teeth, seems to shape condylar patterns, which seems to create the articular eminence. And it's amazing how they seem to match almost perfectly. I'm geeking out here, Ron, and I know I've lost 99% of the people listening, but in very, very short, would you agree with that?
Yes. And if somebody says, well, how much should the overbite be? Well, the overbite should match what the angle of the eminence and the height of the cusps are. So,
I love you so much, Ron. Right? I've never loved a man as much as I love you right now. I just want to say that.
And that's one of the things you can't see on a Ceph or on a Panorex, that if you're taking a look at joint films, if you can see that there's a really steep eminence, and again, we may be that's almost 90 degrees, you can't get an overjet that's steep enough to get disclusion. Wouldn't you want to know that before you start? Right. If one eminence is different or higher than the other, when you put somebody into a protrusive to see how the teeth are functioning, you're going to get an asymmetry. You can't help that. Don't you want to know that before you ever put braces on and say, this is what the limitations are? Tell the general dentist or the referral source, this is where we're lost.
Yeah. You're getting group function off your anteriors, or you're building off your cuspids or something like that.
Yeah, and let me just, I don't know when we're gonna leave this, but let me tell you one other thing that will freak out everybody, maybe
we
even
could
you.
be here for days, Ron. We could be here for days.
My concept, I started in athology like you did. My concept of occlusion has totally changed. I was taught in practice for many years that if you want to check the overjet and overbite, you put in an articulating paper and you should not be able to pull it out between canine to canine, but if you put in shim stock, you ought to. I am seeing everything I have seen since 1988, and I'm retreated, is all due to overcoupling of the anteriors. Number one,
restricted arc of closure.
And the upper incisors have not been torqued nearly enough. So what I want now is 1.5 to 2 millimeters that we miss from upper to lower canine to canine. Not just a little bit. I want it to be missing.
A freedom eccentric, as Peter Dawson would talk about.
As we used to talk about long centric.
Yeah, that's the U-pen, right? The long centric, the freedom eccentric, the ability to not be locked in so that you can move around a little bit.
And the other thing that we see routinely is the curve of Wilson. And I apologize, but if you were to take one thing, the curve of Wilson is way too extreme. Way too extreme. And what I see in all of these cases that have been treated once or twice before is the amount of recession and periodontal problems on the lower posteriors routinely because the curve of Wilson is extreme, which is why in our prescription we uprighted everything. Which brings us, again, to another problem. If the maxilla is already too narrow,
exactly.
Well, that's why I treat phase one. That's why up until 13 or 14 or 17 do expanders, and why lots of people now, when they're past the growth age, are going to need either a MARPI or a SARPI or something if you really don't want to screw up the patient.
Right. And again, we're geeking out here on ethology, and
I'm sure we are.
No, but there's a young restorative dentist near me who just came in as a partner to a referring doc who's really nice. And the young doctor's, full of the old saying, he's full of piss and vinegar, right? He's really wants to get better. And he said, Glenn, what are some suggestions you have for me? I know you're restorative. What are some suggestions for some great courses? And I said, well, Spear and Coyce, you can never go wrong with. And by the way, Coyce talked about rats and cows, talking about cusp heights for years. He still does vertical chewers and horizontal chewers, right? Rats and cows, you have to build them differently restoratively. But I said to him, just go read Pete Dawson's book. Just go read Pete Dawson's book about occlusion, and it will save your bacon more times than you can count. And, the sad part about it is, I once brought up a concept about ethology in Orthopreneurs, and I had people making fun of ethology, making fun of it, saying, I think one of them said, and again, I don't want to misattribute to somebody, but one of their directors said that ethology is a study of how articulators chew or something stupid like that.
Well, we know who he is, very, very famous.
Yeah, we know. And it's not like he's at all controversial in anything else. But my point is, what kind of disservice do you do orthodontists when you put down the basic occlusal principles that are going to, every orthodontist thinks they're, hot crap until in the middle of treatment or post-treatment, the patient comes in with joint symptoms. And then all of a sudden, they vent themselves, change their pants, and start calling friends and going, what do I do? How do I handle this? My patient, she's 25 years old, and now her joint started popping, and she's having jaw pain. And gee, you left a pretty deep Wilson's curve down there, and you don't have an immediate dysfunction from your cuspids. And you know what? The lateral pterygoids are hotter than hell, and there's been an asymmetry being pulled on the cartilage, on the disc. And you know who created it was you. Now, nobody's going to die, but to that individual, their life is disrupted, and you have no idea. Now you say, well, I'll send them to the TMJ specialist. But you created the problem, right? And so at the end of the day, You can make fun of gnatology all you want. The problem with gnatology and with occlusion in general is the barrier to entry requires a tremendous fee because you are not going to get occlusion while you stand on one foot. Occlusion requires, it took me 3 years and about 500 hours of training at the University of Washington gnathology program while I was a GP. And you probably did Roth 40 times, I'm guessing, right?
We did Roth, we did Ricketts. And I practiced Roth for 23 years and then realized that there were shortcomings. And a lot of it had to do with prescription, and a lot of it had to do with muscles, and the muscles dictate everything. So muscles have to be relaxed, and then you have to be able, and when people tell me that occlusion is not related to TMJ, you have no idea, you don't know what your anatomy is like. You just have no idea. So at any rate.
Yeah, you and I speak the same language here. And the part that's really important is don't impress me. I am not impressed because you placed 8 TADs and mesialized the dentition. It's a screw. You stuck a screw in some bone and you basically built a wood shed in someone's mouth and used biomechanical principles to pull teeth. That's great. It's wonderful. You've got the cojones to put a zygomatic TAD in or something. That's wonderful. But you want to impress the hell out of me as an orthodontist? Show me, and again, I'm not saying this is not do as I do. Okay, I try my best. But when I see case after case after case after case presented on screen, and you look at them from the anterior, and they look gorgeous, but you see that the upper cuspids and the lower cuspids, there's a space. A nice space where the cuspids are not really near each other. And you know for sure that when this person goes into parafunctional activities, they're working group function off their posterior teeth every time. And the case looks beautiful and it's class 1, but those cuspids always have space between the upper and the lower cuspids. Either the lowers need to be torqued out or the uppers need to be torqued in slightly or detorqued to allow you that almost, not quite, but almost immediate cuspid rise when you go left and right to protect the posterior dentition. And if you don't understand why that's important, or you just want to poo-poo it, take your cases and do like Morty Amsterdam did and take 40-year retrospective pictures of your cases and let's look at the wear patterns, let's look at the tomograms, let's look at the CBCT. And I think, and tell me if I'm crazy, but I think most orthodontists would be appalled to see what their cases are going to look like 40 years from now if they ignore the basic occlusal principles.
I'm treating those that have been anywhere from 2 years to 50 years post-treatment and multiple treatment times. And as I said, way back when, I was seeing disasters that I was causing and retreated just under 670 of my own patients at no charge. And again, and some of those had to treat again because they were failures. So it's like, if you see me retiring, if you see the announcement that I'm retiring, I have finished one perfect case.
That's awesome.
And that's all. Then I will retire. When I get one perfect case, I will retire.
Until then, it's just short of perfect. And by the way, the last thing I want to just bring up, because we talked about this a little bit, and I know we've been going for 45 minutes, but I just want to take a few minutes on this one. Our orthodontists, you've been teaching orthodontists now for 40 plus years, almost 50. I've been in the game of sort of herding orthodontists, not hurting, herding with a D.
With a D.
For about almost 8 years now, Orthopreneurs. It was January 2017. So it's been 7.5 years. There's a pattern that we've seen in orthodontists that our peers love to complain about their team members. They love to complain about their patients. But we'll see the same exact pattern of behavior in them. And I just want to bring it up real quick because people may not like to hear this, but orthodontists, you're making life so miserable and so hard on meeting organizers, on people who are trying to help you, on course directors, on just everybody. And let me tell you why. I don't want to get Ron in trouble here, so I'm going to take the burden on me. Not that he cares, but when we post and say, we got this great course, and 85 of you say, I'm in, right? And then suddenly you can only get 5 people show up. Not people at 85 say, I'll think about it, or I'm not sure. They say, no, sounds amazing, I'm in, get me the information. And 5 show up. Ron, talk a little bit, if you don't mind, about the evolution of education that you've seen in the United States.
when I first started teaching this JSOP, which is in 1988. I won't even tell you how we got to want to do that. But one person said, I've taken your 2-day course over 5 times. Every time you talk, you add something different. And he said, you should do like a year-long course. So we did that.
You should do. By the way, how often do we get a you should do? And
Yes.
then you
Yeah.
do, and
And-
nobody comes.
That's right. The first one we did, I charged $16,000 for, and I thought I'd get 3 or 4 people.
What year?
1988.
Okay.
25 people showed up, and the classes were filled every time. Then we moved our location. I changed it to 20,000. 30 people showed up for about another 7 years. We've reduced our fee in the U.S. because there's no travel to Europe or wherever I'm going, to $9,000. And it is crazy difficult to get anybody in there because they're all busy. They've got something to do. They're taking this course on whatever. They've got.
I can't make it work, Ron.
Yeah.
I can't make it work.
I've heard, I've wanted to take your course for years. I've just never had the chance. I said, well, I've been doing this for more than 40 years. This particular course, I've done 66 of them. You had an opportunity. So it's like, that's why the last one in the United States, I announced the one we're doing now was the last one. Right. 3 people have said, please do it again. I want to come, blah, blah, blah. And so we are going to do one in 2025. I've got the date set. 2 people have signed up. I'll see how many other people sign up because they're too busy or they've got, I don't know what they've got. I really don't understand it. But
you're not alone. You're not alone. I hear this from all educators who've been doing this for 10, 15, 20 years, that nowadays, 2 things. People's word doesn't matter to them at all, right? You'll have 20 people say, if you do this, I'll be there. And then all of a sudden, 15 or 16 of them, literally that percentage rate, will say, oh, I thought I could do it, but I can't. That's number one. Number 2 is the value of what it is that's being provided. I think people think they're getting equal value out of the groups that are run like Orthopreneurs and Pearls and Digital Ortho. I think they think somehow through osmosis they're going to get it. The third is, I think people are, I don't know why people are afraid to spend money. Like the best investment on the planet is in you. You can't get people to come to a course. So it's $1,000 for a course on how to do a technique. That's crazy. I told you when I did Michael Schuster's 1-year program in about 99 or 2000, I spent $57,000 of money I did not have. I took out a bank loan because I knew that taking this course would change my practice forever. And I've made back legitimately 100-fold on that investment in the ensuing 20, 25 years. And when I do my coaching program, just like Michael Schuster did it, I'm going to do exactly what he did with updated to today's modern days. It will be a $75,000 program. And the people who do it, who come through the year-long program, will see multiples on that return that will blow them away. And everybody will tell me what a great idea it is and how they're all going to go and it's going to be wonderful. And then I'll build it and I'll spend a year building it. And all of a sudden, one person will sign up.
Yeah. Well, maybe not. Maybe
not. None will show up.
Maybe more will do it. Maybe we'll be surprised.
And what I'm saying out here, and this isn't meant as a gripe session, people. What I'm just telling you out here is 2 things. Number one, there just felt 20 years ago like there was a different value placed on the expert opinion on education. And that's when Coyce and Spear built what they built, was 20 plus years ago, right? And number 2, if you're going to tell a course director, a person like Ron who's going to build something, that you're going to be there, right? I have an aunt who taught her children, my cousins, that when someone invites you to something, you always say yes, always. Someone invites you to a wedding, someone invites you to a confirmation, whatever it is, you're invited, you go. And it doesn't matter where it is, or if they've thought enough to think of you, go. If folks out there, if there's a course that was designed with you in mind and you said you're going to go, all right? And what a funny thing is going to happen, you're going to start seeing a lot more courses happen. A lot of good stuff will start happening because people like Ron, who are content builders, folks like myself who are content builders, when we see an opportunity for people who want to do it, we'll bend over backwards and build more and more and more and more. But if you build a course for 20 people and 3 show up, how motivated will you be to build the next one? Am I wrong here, Ron?
No, I don't think so. I know that's true.
Yeah, and again,
I don't think it's true. I know it's true.
it's not about me and Ron. I'm hearing this from educators across the globe, that they're having a really hard time. And there's some really amazing speakers. And of course, there's a core group of people who will always go to whatever is being taught. But my lesson for all of you is take some more courses in person. Take some more, just go. The courses are worth every penny. You'll get your money back 100-fold from most of them over the course of your career. And expose yourself to new people and new ideas, and only good things are going to happen. And so, Ron, I could talk to you for days, and we didn't even talk about balancing interferences in the lateral pterygoid. Not once.
Yeah, not once.
Well,
no.
I'm looking forward to seeing it. By the time this drops, I may have already seen you on the cruise.
Looking forward to it.
Orthopreneurs Summit. I'm really looking forward to that. A mighty seaman like yourself. Looking forward to having you on the ship. But even better is next year, among a really star-studded cast of people, I'm fortunate and humbled that you're speaking at Orthopreneurs Summit 2025, our first ever summit that's going to be both practice management and clinical. To have you and Tom Pitts and Stu Frost and Maz Moshiri and Diego Pedro, and I could list name after name, gracing the stage with both clinical and leadership management in Las Vegas. It's going to be amazing, Ron. I can't wait to have you there.
I can't wait either.
Yeah.
I appreciate all that you do, Glenn, in spite of some of the arrows you get from some people, because especially when you're talking about the business aspect, as you know, nobody ever learns anything about business or practice in dental school or in graduate school. I mean, zilch. And so you're sort of left out there deeply in debt. And so what you do with Orthopreneurs is, if not everybody appreciates it, a whole bunch of us absolutely do.
Well, thanks, Ron. And I tell you, I love the arrows. If you're not getting arrows, if you don't have a target on your back, you're not trying hard enough. And the funniest part is there's a whole group of people out there who don't realize that sometimes I'm just trying to stir the pot. And they do, and they go along with it. And I'm like, when will they learn? But again, I think you and I, we feed off of yes, we love to create great smiles, but I think we also feed off of the joy of seeing our peers not make the same mistakes that we've made, and to follow in the footsteps of some great people who've taught us lessons along the way. And when I see somebody get it, sort of like the aha moment on something, or they've solved a business problem in their life, that is far more rewarding to me than creating a smile. I'll take that all day long.
Yep.
And I know you're built the same way. And so thank you for everything. Can't wait to see you at the summit, both this year and next. And for anybody who's looking to sign up for Orthopreneurs 2025, just go to opsummit2025.com. It hasn't even opened right now as I say it, but I think by the time this podcast drops, it'll be open. And the pricing on the tickets, we're trying something new. We're rewarding people who sign up early, not by time, but based on number of tickets sold. So there's 150 tickets at the lowest price, it goes up $200. Then there's 150 tickets at the next price, it goes up $200. Then it's so on and so forth. So if you want to get in there and you want to save money, sign up early. If not, you'll sign up later. It'll be great. It just might cost you $600 more per ticket. So let's see what happens. It should be fun to watch. And
can't wait.
Just have a wonderful day. And I can't wait on the cruise to sit and talk. We're going to get a drink in our hand, maybe a nice red wine, and talk about nathology.
And we'll be the only two there.
Yeah, we will not talk nathology.
Boring people. Even the nathologists want to bust one's holiday. I don't necessarily though.
I agree. We say it, we don't really mean it. Have a wonderful day, Ron.
Thanks, Glenn. I appreciate it.